This wacky winter has created some truly weird conditions up high in the Adirondacks. That was especially true over the weekend after a storm dumped more than a foot of snow on top of mud, ice, old punky snow, and exposed creeks and ravines. Very dangerous conditions. On Saturday morning, rangers rescued one man who nearly didn't make it out alive. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from the St. Lawrence County Community Development Program, now accepting applications for the Head Start program to prepare children ages 3 to 5 for school. Online at slccdp.org/head-start.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Tuesday, March 26th. First up, Governor Kathy Hochul and her top aides announced the state's preparations for the upcoming solar eclipse on April 8th. The eclipse will be visible in much of the North Country and in western New York, 29 counties in all. At a press conference yesterday, the governor said while it promises to be a fun, once-in-a-generation event, people need to take some precautions and be prepared for lots of traffic. Karen DeWitt reports.
Governor Hochul says state campgrounds will open early and are almost fully booked. There will be viewing events at state parks and historic sites. The Buffalo Bills have cut a special public service announcement, and the state has even compiled a special Spotify playlist, which includes this Beatles classic as well as some more modern choices for traveling to and from the event.
This is going to be great for our tourism. It's going to bring in thousands, if not millions of people to localities all the way along the trajectory of this. It's going to be Jamestown and Buffalo and Niagara Falls and Plattsburgh and everything in between. So we're excited.
New York's Director of State Operations, Catherine Garcia, says if the weather cooperates, the eclipse promises to be a magical moment.
It's going to be breathtakingly beautiful. Everything transforms into twilight. There is a 360-degree sunset. Planets and stars will suddenly fill the sky. Birds and animals will go quiet, and a rare chance to see a solar corona, the sun's wispy outer atmosphere. It is really going to be an unforgettable moment.
But she says you need to take some precautions. By now, most people know that you can't look directly at the sun while the eclipse is happening, or you could permanently damage your eyes. You need special glasses. The state is making free protective glasses available at several thruway rest stops in the days leading up to the event. Garcia says if you purchase the glasses elsewhere, make sure they're safe and they'll protect your eyes.
Literally, if you can see your hand in front of your face with the glasses on, if you can see, they're not good. If you try these, you cannot see anything unless you are staring directly at the sun.
And she says if you have kids with you, make sure they don't look directly at the sun by mistake. Jackie Bray, the state's commissioner of Homeland Security, says they're treating the eclipse like any mass event. They're staffing up state police and thruway and Department of Transportation officials to deal with traffic management. More tow trucks and help trucks with supplies, including extra gasoline, will be on hand.
We absolutely expect significant gridlock. You will be in traffic for several hours. It is still an absolutely worthwhile thing to do, but we want to make sure that you stay patient.
Bray recommends making use of the state's 511 number for advice about alternative routes if the roads are clogged. And she says if you're traveling to western or northern New York for the eclipse, it might be better to come a day early for the event and stay a day late. She says cell phone service might be overloaded at times during the event, but she says 911 will work. For those who are trying to go about their normal day, Bray says working from home is a good idea, and you should consider canceling any scheduled appointments. On the day of the eclipse, they recommend you should plan to get to your destination early and to stay late to avoid the traffic jams, and bring snacks.
Black hole sun, won't you come?
The total eclipse is the first one visible in New York since 1925. There won't be another one until 2079. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt for the New York Public News Network.
A 33-year-old man from New York City was lost overnight in the Adirondacks last weekend. He had planned to summit 3 high peaks, but then lost the trail after abandoning the second summit. The man was reported missing around 10 p.m. Friday and found around 10 in the morning on Saturday. Forest Ranger Robbie Meekus was one of the first people to find him and says he was lucky to be alive. She spoke with our Adirondack reporter Emily Russell about the rescue.
So the hiker set out Friday morning. His plan was to summit Mount Marcy, Skylight, and Gray. Those are 3 high peaks. There was a snowstorm in the forecast for Friday night. What do you know about the conditions that the man was prepared for when he set out for his hike?
So the conditions when he set out for his hike were probably 4 to 5 feet of snow near the summit of Mount Marcy, with probably 6 to 8 inches of fresh powder over older, harder snowpack. That's probably what he was walking in before the snowstorm hit.
So he did summit Mount Marcy, but then lost the trail after giving up on the second 2 high peaks. Is that accurate?
That's right. He summited Mount Marcy around 1:30. He texted his relative that he was on the summit of Mount Marcy and was continuing on. He, according to him, he went down and he started going up Skylight and quickly realized that he did not have the time to finish all 3.
So you were one of the first people to find him Saturday morning. What condition was he like when you found him?
I think it's important, before we even talk about that, to talk about the fact that if we did not find his tracks in the snow, he was in a location where people don't normally wind up there. It would not have been searched right away. It may have taken a couple of days to get rangers into that remote drainage back in there. And we were rapidly losing his tracks in the snowstorm. If we were 3 or 4 hours later, we would not have seen his tracks and we would not have found him. I think it's important to note just how lucky that was.
And what was he like when you first encountered him?
He was alert and conscious. He was very cold. He had fallen through the drainage multiple times. The drainage that he was following uphill. He had fallen through and gotten very wet. The drainages are not frozen. So he got very wet. He stopped when it got dark and found a small sort of hole in the snow between a boulder and a root. He was able to crawl into that hole and rest there. But his clothes froze to the outside of his body and his boots froze to his feet. So when we found him, everything was frozen on top of him, and he was not really able to help himself at that point. He couldn't use his hands. He couldn't do anything other than stand there.
What lesson is there to be learned from this specific rescue? And is it similar to, other situations that folks get themselves in when they go hiking in the Adirondack High Peaks, particularly in winter conditions?
Yeah, so I think the lesson to learn is a vast majority of people who go out and hike, particularly in the winter, nothing ever happens. Their hike is successful, and that's fine. A lot of people get lulled into thinking that they can take less and less gear with them and still be safe. So I don't think people often realize how closely they tread the line between a successful day out in the mountains and tragedy. It's a very fine line. And I think the compounding factor in that is that you could have something go wrong, but if you're prepared to spend the night in the woods, that something that went wrong, like let's say losing the trail, doesn't have to be a life-threatening ordeal.
That was Forest Ranger Robbie Meekus speaking with Emily Russell. The DEC is urging people to avoid hiking in the high peaks for the solar eclipse. Lower elevations may be muddy and prone to erosion, and there'll be ice and multiple feet of snow at higher elevations. We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Eddie Lawrence of Moira and Paul Myers of Colton. I'm David Sommerstein, North Country Public Radio.